This episode is brought to you by Midwest Night Watchers, found everywhere on your favorite podcast platforms.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Piercing the Veil.
Happy Sunday again. Where'd this week go?
I don't know. It's flown by.
Yep. So once again, here we are. Hope everyone's having a good week and weather's straightening up for everybody.
Yep. We got Easter coming up really soon, and the weather's
Sunday.
starting to turn nice.
Well, speaking of that, no, we will not be on next Sunday because it is Easter, but we have a show scheduled for that next Tuesday. Just to let everyone know ahead of time.
But we've been having movie nights on Friday and Saturday on our Rumble channel only, not YouTube. So maybe Easter weekend, maybe we'll play some Easter appropriate movies.
Ah, that's an idea. Yeah, that would work. So I see Moon at Noon. We have a Dwarfy. We have Gary and Roger. Welcome in, you guys.
Yeah, welcome.
So I guess everyone knows who Lynn is. I lost total track. 5 times? 5th time? I don't know. Lynn is definitely one of our regulars.
She's been our most popular guest as far as appearances and coming back, and we just love having her. And I'm not sure what we'll talk about tonight because we've talked about her series, and if she has something new with her books or whatever she's got going on, we'll talk about that. We've talked about fairies. We've talked about all kinds of stuff, paranormal, afterlife. We've talked about the colors in heaven. This is from her book. That's how it all started. So I know she has new projects coming up, so maybe we'll dive into that.
Yeah. So why don't we just get going and just let Lynn start talking?
All right, we'll bring her up. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome back.
Thank you so much. You know, you were mentioning how the weeks are just like flying by.
Yeah.
Time is speeding up.
Yeah.
It really, really is. It's just crazy how it goes by. And Gerald, Jane and I were talking before. We were talking about funerals and some stuff that is kind of important too, because I have in my book, Colors of Heaven, in the back, I have a section for end-of-life directives to help walk you through end-of-life directives so that, you know, things that you wouldn't necessarily think of to, you know, prepare for your loved one if you were passing. And we were did you guys want to talk about that for a minute? Because I think it's a good point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some of these things can really throw off the family, and you don't expect that. You're already losing a loved one, but then you get thrown with some surprises, and it makes the grief even worse. So, yeah, I think a lot of people need to be aware of some of this.
Absolutely. You know, as I'd mentioned to you, and I want to mention this to everybody as a medical professional, when you go into the hospital, into the emergency room, make sure that you sign for yourself. You don't sign for your spouse. You don't sign for your children unless they're under 18. And there's a reason for this. For one thing, you're protecting them. from any expenses if things were to take a turn for the worse type thing. And people don't realize this because, I mean, the ladies in admission will hand it to the mailman if he's standing close enough to you and dumb enough to sign. So, I mean, they don't care just as long as the paperwork is signed. So I had for instance, with a friend of mine, and then we'll talk about funerals too, a friend of mine who she and her husband had gone to the emergency room for, there were some issues with I don't remember, gallstones or something like that. And they were in the emergency room, and the lady came in with her little clickety shoes. And, all of a sudden she says, well, I'll sign because I'm the POA. And I'm listening to this and I'm like, Susan, why are you signing for your husband when I can hear him in the background? He's alert and oriented. And she said, well, I'm power of attorney. I said, no, you're not. I said that paper, power of attorney, and people, they need to understand that there's a difference between power of attorney and healthcare power of attorney. Mm-hmm. One covers the health and make sure that the decisions are made for you that you would want to make for yourself when you're not able to speak for yourself. The POA is all of the rest of the stuff. But the thing is neither one of those go into, they're not active until the person is not able to speak for themselves appropriately or speak for themselves at all, for that matter. So I made mention to her. I'm like, no. I said, you need to go back to that lady, take those papers, tell her that you're doing her a favor, because technically it was illegal for her to hand you those papers since your husband is alert and oriented and talking in the background. She should have handed them to him, ask her to shred them in front of you, and then have them bring them back in and have, your husband sign them. And she did. And sure enough, he whatever happened, something happened that was adverse, and he ended up dying. So here now she is, a mother with children at home, and it's a 2-income family and that sort of thing. And now she's got 1 income because he's gone. And all of these bills could start coming in because he was actually on life support for a couple of days, which is $100,000 a day. And even if you've got 80-20 on your insurance, that's still a lot of money that builds up.
Right.
So anyway, she went to an attorney and she's like, I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to lose everything. And the attorney said to her, and this is what happened to also my stepmother in Florida when my dad passed away, and my friend in another state. And, the attorney said to her, he said, did you sign for anything? And she said, no. And he said, no tests approval, no discharge papers, anything. And she said, well, I did at first, but then my friend told me to go back and have it corrected because, my husband was able to sign. And he said, well, your friend just saved you all of this money that these bills tally up to, because what's going to happen is in 30 days, a bill is going to come. 60 days, another bill is going to come. 90 days, another bill is going to come. And 120, you're going to get a nasty letter probably from a collection agency, and it's going to ruin your husband's credit. But your husband's dead. So she ended up not having to pay any of those expenses. And I'm not telling you not to pay your hospital bills, but I'm telling you not to get stuck with somebody else's, because I don't care what they say. They'll tell you, oh, no, you can sign for them. No, not if they're alert and oriented. You can't sign for them. That's against the law. And not only that, but when you say to them, well, I'm not going to be paying the bill. Oh, no, you won't get stuck with that. Baloney. Who are you going to call up when you get the bill and now it's transferred into your name, and you're going to say, these are my husband's medical bills? And they're like, well, who told you? And I was told by the lady in admitting, that I wouldn't have to pay them. They're like, well, I don't know why she told you that. You know what I'm saying? And then you don't have a leg to stand on. And when you're in an emergency room situation, you're under duress. You trust that the person who is on the other side knows how to do their job and is going to have your best interest at heart. And they don't. They're just pen and paper pushing. And and that can happen. And also, there's a new thing too with people that are deciding not to have funerals because funerals have gotten so ridiculously expensive. They're like $10,000 to $20,000 if you want to include flowers that are going to dry up and die and get stinky, and things like that. And so people are opting not to have funerals anymore, to just be gone, which really, that is my preference. And I've told my children, I don't care what you do with me. You can bury me or cremate me, whatever you need to do for your closure, because I'm going to be very happy where I'm at. And I don't care what you do with my remains. But if you do cremate me, I have a special place that I want you to put me. I don't want you to keep me in your house. So, but the thing is even an obituary that is a decent length is $400. And technically all that you need is wherever you take the loved one, or whoever picks up the loved one for either burial or embalming or cremation, they automatically have to put a notice in the newspaper and on their website and on that candle thing too, I think, stating that the person has passed. And that is enough for the creditors and think that's really all that you need. And I've told my kids, I said, save the money. Go buy yourself something nice, pay off your car, something that's going to make your life easier, or take a cruise or rent a cabin in the snow and, go snowmobiling and have the whole family meet there with their kids and everything. And, you can make a few of mom's recipes while you're there and talk about me. But it's like, I don't want to have a bunch of people standing over me bawling, when I'm happy as can be where I'm at, and having their sorrow anchor me, So it's just that's just a little bit of off the beaten path, but it could save somebody who is listening a lot of money, and to keep you from getting stuck with somebody else's bills. So anyway,
Roger asked, what if the family member cannot write?
All that you need is 2 hospital employees present for him to verbalize or her to verbalize their permission to be treated, and it's the same as a signature. Yeah, so like if you wheel in your spouse and they're puking like crazy, pull the bucket away, hand him a pen, and wish them well. But if they come in with their arms cut off, and they're alert and oriented, then they can verbalize yes that they give permission for treatment, and then it can be done that way. Now, there are some times when you do have to sign. If somebody's had a head injury and they're unconscious, then your power of attorney does kick in for that, or healthcare power of attorney does kick in for that. And then you kind of are responsible to sign. Mm-hmm. So, but try to stand next to the postal worker and let him pass it up. I'm joking. That's terrible. But you know what I'm saying? Just, I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So, no, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but so if they come in and they are able to verbalize or write, for their own bill, is there a point after that, if they become despondent or whatever, that you have to sign something, or just say, no, they already signed for everything, you just need to do whatever you need to do for that person?
That depends. That depends on if they're going to do further treatment or not. And they need maybe a paper sign for an EKG, for some, colonoscopy or something to find something, or a biopsy kind of thing. And if they're still, but I mean, if they're unconscious, they're not going to do that anyway. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And another thing is too, I want to share this with people too, and it's very, very important. The medical community, if you are over 80 years old, they're hesitant to treat you. Mm-hmm. There is a prejudice for races, not racism, but for ageism. So if you do go in, and my father was a prime example. He was 93, totally alert and oriented. He could speak fluent Russian. He was a math professor, and he could even teach a statistics class in full Russian. His wife was from Russia, so he spoke fluent Spanish and English. Very, very smart man. And he was still driving. He had all of his teeth. They were purple. They were like a blue color, but he had every single one. They were all in decent condition. And he loved going to the buffet, eating the ribs off of the the smorgasbord thing every week with his wife. But the thing was he started to sound raspy. and I overheard him talking, and his voice kind of diminished, but then I overheard him coughing. I'm like, Dad, it sounds like you're hacking up a lung. He says, yeah, it's these allergies. They keep giving me the medicine and it's not working. And I've been taking medicine for years and it's just gradually working less and less. And I'm like, nah, you need to go get that checked because that does not sound good. So he went, and the doctor put a tongue depressor in his mouth and could see on his vocal cord a cancer tumor, a very slow growing cancer tumor that he must have had for years, very slow growing. And I don't care what the medical community says. In my experience, I've been a nurse for 40 years. I'm going to be 62 next month. In my experience, when you start poking around on the C word, the cancer word, it exacerbates it. It inflames it. It pisses it off, and it exacerbates it. And unfortunately, the first thing that a doctor says, even though he could tell that it was cancer on his vocal cord just by looking at it, and most of them can, but they have to biopsy it. Well, why do you need to biopsy it if you're not going to treat it?
Right.
Well, we just have to know. Well, why do you have to know? You're looking at it. You're telling me that it's cancer and it's slow growing, so leave it alone. I kid you not. My father, of course, didn't call me at that time, and he immediately took a biopsy in the office and sent it out. Within 2 days, my father's airway was occluded. He had to have a trach put in, and then then within a week of that, it grew so big that he couldn't swallow either. Maybe it was the other way around. One of them came first, and then the other. And he died 2 weeks later, a miserable death. He died because of having that thing in his throat that if they had left it alone, because he had no symptoms otherwise, he felt fine. He was still going to the beach every other day, and he would walk the beach up and down, and then he'd swim the same length. He was athletic, and he was in good shape, and he didn't have a lot of medicine that he was taking or anything. And because they tampered with it, it went to town.
Yeah.
And literally, so if you have a person that is over 80, before they do a biopsy on anything, question it and say, well, if you do the biopsy, are you going to treat it? Confront them on that. Are you going to treat it? And if they hem and haw, well, with his age and da-da-da-da-da, well, then don't do the biopsy.
Right. They just want more money. They just want money for the biopsy.
Yeah, and it's in reality, they have a cure for cancer. They've had it for 10 years, but Big Pharma doesn't want people to be cured of cancer because they make so much money off of it. They make money off of people being sick. They don't want people to be healthy. So, and they're doing a lot of things with red light therapy. But the thing is that, then don't do it. If they're symptomatic and they're comfortable, or their pain can be managed with ibuprofen or something like that, and they still have good quality of life, because once you start those treatments, you don't feel so good, And the thing is too, another thing, just real quick, and then I'll get off my bandwagon about the cancer thing, is also request when you have that biopsy. There's a facility that's called MD Anderson. They're excellent. They're like the top of the top for cancer treatment. And the reason why is because they do things differently. When people get a biopsy done, they send it out to the lab and it comes backstage as 3 or 4 or whatever it is. And then they have this little list of chemo treatments that they start off with. And, well, that one made your hair fall out, but it didn't work. So we'll try the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. And by the time you get to the one that's actually going to work for you, most of the time people are dead, type thing. So what MD Anderson does is they take the biopsy and they put it in something and they pour the chemo treatment on it, so that they know exactly which chemo treatment is going to be effective with your tumor tissue. And that's one that they use first. Unfortunately, a lot of times the insurance companies won't cover it because they want you to go through the whole gamut. But you can insist. And also, if the insurance won't cover it, you can get donations. And you can also, if the doctor is willing to write a note that states that it's medically necessary for you to have that type, a lot of times that is enough in itself to get the insurance companies on board to pay. Whoops, I lost you. Did I lose you? What happened?
Lost a camera.
Your camera. There you go.
Okay. All right. So anyway, just a little bit of that. Please tell everybody that you know, don't to sign for other people. I'll get off my bandwagon about it now, but these are things that you do need to know. You know, all of us are getting a little older. Like I said, I'm going to be 62 next month. And, you know, when you aren't in the field of it, you don't seem to realize. I've also noticed that a lot of people, when they have the diagnosis, they'll immediately lay down, curl up in a fetal position, put their little knitted beanie on and lay there and wait for death. And it's like, no, this is time for you to make precious moments good. And this is time to get your things in order. If there's a part of the roof that you needed to repair that you've been putting off, this is the time to do it, because you want to leave your loved ones in good condition. If you have money buried underneath the house, this is the time to make the list of where to find things, who to contact for it, what the account numbers are, and that sort of thing. You know, teach your spouse how to drive and balance a checkbook if you haven't done that yet. You know what I'm saying? For older people, but it's important. It's actually precious moments that you have a time. Get your pictures out, right on the back of them who they are. So when your grandchildren look at them and it's their great, 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 great grandmother, then they'll know who it is. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, you know, and make your recipe book if you're ladies that had special things that your family did. So there are a lot of things that you can do to leave things easier for your family and stuff like that. So anyway, that's my tip for the day.
Very good.
Well, we had a comment that says, "Are you sure it's 62 and not 42, Lynn?"
Oh, thank you. I like you. Yes, I'm positive. I was born in 1963. I did have a late life baby at 46, and she's 16, going on 17, and I used to like to think that she kept me young, but now, you know, when things start getting hairy, they get mouthy. And so, but she's a good kid. She's a straight A student and everything like that. She's a really, really good kid. But it's like, you know, I used to say that she keeps me young, and now she's giving me a few gray hairs. So anyway, you know, but she's a good kid. I couldn't ask for a better kid. But anyway, did you want to talk about my new book that's getting ready to come out?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I don't want to hog the conversation, so please jump in, or if there's any questions, I'll be happy to you know, respond to those as well. As everybody knows, I have the Omnipresent series. Most of it is spooky-ooky. So it starts with the Omnipresent book, which is a story about a house that I purchased that was so haunted that I never moved into it. It had a hell dog, another level demon, and a young man that hung himself in the house. Then I have Omnipresent, What Happened Next. And that is a story about what happened next. It also goes into mental illness, addiction, and attachments, and other, you know, and another couple of hauntings that people had in the area that the house was that I had bought. I'm writing, I have, that one. And that's an actual event that occurred in the house. My son was sitting on the master bathroom toilet. And it's probably a blessing that he was on the toilet, because it scared him that bad. And that is an actual picture of the house. And if you zero in on that window, you can see a face of a demon in that window. There's like on the right-hand side, there is a demon face in that window. Anyway, I have a third book in that series coming out. It's going to be a series of 5 books. This book that has been waiting to come out is called Omnipresent 111 Becca Drive. And this is an experience that I had. Again, you know, who would think that it would happen more than once in a lifetime? But then again, I grew up in a haunted house. So, you know, I guess that makes me haunted, or at least, you know, some forces know me by my first name. But anyway, what happened with this is my daughter and my son and I was divorced for the second time, and we were living in a townhouse. And my son had graduated from high school. He was getting ready to move out on his own. And I'm like, you know what? I'm tired of paying $1,600 a month rent. We only need a 2-bedroom, 1-bath place. You know, I want to get something a little bit less expensive now that he's going to be moving on his own. And so I actually started to look for a house. I wanted to buy a house first. And I actually found one that I wanted to get, but lo and behold, I then got served with papers from my ex-husband who liked taking me to court. It was a way for him to financially extort me through the legal system. And he took me to court a lot for different things, but we won't go there. I don't want to make that show about him because it'll make me sick. But anyway, so after I got served with papers, I had to take all of that money that I had saved up for a house and the house that I had found. I mean, I had made an offer that day and put it on defense attorneys and guardian ad litem's again and all of that type thing. So I ended up, I had 30 days to move. The landlord had another family already had signed a lease that was going to be moving in right back to back. I'm moving out one day. I'm literally passing the keys off to them and leaving to go to the next place. And what happened is I'm looking for a place to move, and I'm pressured for time. And I come across this one place that the price is right. And I'm like, oh, is it in a bad area? I wonder. And I did the virtual tour through it, and it had been renovated, and it was really pretty inside. And so I called the management company, and they told me where the area was so I could drive out and look. And it was on a dead end street in a nice area. There was this little church across the street and one house and a whole string of 10 townhouses that were connected, 2-story townhouses. And so the area was nice. And so I contacted her back, told her that I was interested. I filled out the application, sent in the fee. And of course, then I was approved for the townhouse. And I agreed to meet the agent at the townhouse when I was bringing my first, last, and security to sign the lease and make it official. So when I go there, again, I'm having to leave to pick up my daughter from school. It was in the afternoon. So I just did a quick walkthrough. And when I went in the door, I noticed that the kitchen didn't look like the one in the ad. And I mentioned it. I'm like, this is an older kitchen. This isn't the same kitchen like the pretty modern one that you had in the ad. And I said, I wanted the apartment with the nice kitchen and the open floor plan. And she says, well, this is the only one that we have available right now. And we have one like that, but it's not going to be available until the end of the month. And of course, I didn't have time to take another month and then a month from then to move in because, when you're moving, you're paying for two places, the one you're moving into, the one you're moving out of, and there's electric on in both, water on in both. So I went ahead and I'm like, I walked through the house. It had nice French doors on the back. It had wooden flooring. I went upstairs. It had brand new carpeting. And so I came down and I didn't go in with my sensors on, didn't go on with my camera taking pictures or anything like that. And I said to the lady, I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and sign for this. And she said, well, we have to still finish a few things on the house. The carpet needs to be cleaned and we will give you the keys on Monday. This was a Friday. When you come, and then you can then start moving in once the carpet is dry. I said, okay, fine. So I leave. Oh, and I did mention to her too, when I was signing the lease, I had to say it. I'm like, if for some reason this house turns out to be haunted, is there a way, how would I go about breaking the lease? And she looked at me and she's like, what? And I said, yeah. And so I told her, I said, listen, I bought a house once that was so haunted, I was never able to move into it. And I don't plan on ever doing that again. So I want to make sure that I have an out, that we agree on that. And right. That I have an out just in case this house turns out to be haunted, and then I can then break the lease and leave. And she said to me, well, I'll work with you if something happens that way. And she kind of chuckled to herself, thinking I was a crazy lady. So anyway, I signed the lease. I went to the office on Monday morning. I picked up the keys. I had my van all stuffed with boxes of dishes and stuff to take over to the new place. And when I went inside, I brought in the boxes, put them on the counter, and I went to start, to put away my things. And I noticed that the inside of the cabinets were not wiped out, and there was roach poop, and there was the refrigerator, the handle was loose on the door. And then when I opened it, the crisper drawers were cracked and it was dirty inside, and the oven was disgusting. The microwave was disgusting. Everything was filthy. So I called the management company. I said, listen, this house is supposed to be move-in ready. I'm moving in today, but it hasn't been cleaned. I said, it has not been cleaned. And so they apologized and said that they would send someone out to clean it. And that same day, one of the other managers came by to take the lockbox off of the doorknob. So I invited her in and I started showing her around. I showed her the nasty toilet with congealed urine on the base of it and on the sides, and the pubic hair in the drain of the shower. I mean, there was the soap scum ring around it where it hadn't been cleaned either. And there was a toothbrush holder that was broken and cracked in half because it was one of those older ceramic ones that they used to put up with tile. Mm-hmm. So, and she agreed with me that it was not clean. And she said, we will take care of it. I said, okay, thank you. So I was assured that afternoon so I didn't put anything away. I just put the boxes, kind of tucked them in a corner. And they said that the cleaning people would be coming that afternoon and that I should be able to go over the next day and start putting my stuff away. I said, okay, fine. So I didn't go back that afternoon. I just continued to pack things and load up my van. And so the next morning after I dropped my daughter off at school, I went over again, got boxes that I'm unloading. And again, it's not clean. Same issue. Everything's filthy. It looked like somebody had dumped cleaner in the toilet, but then just left it there. You know, they didn't swish it around or whatever, because it was that gel stuff that was kind of in a ring. So I called them again and I said, look, the house is not clean. And I have, like, at that point I had like less than 10 days to get out of the house that I was living in. And I needed a day or two to have the cleaning company that I was hiring to come in and clean and, you know, the carpets and clean that house, because I didn't have time, you know, to have time for me to get out furniture and everything and do that. And my furniture was coming in 5 days. So, so again, they're like, well, we will send somebody. And we went through this. And finally, I'm like, you know what? I'm not taking a chance with that. I'm going to call the company that I've hired to do the other place and see if they can send somebody to clean this one, because I'm starting to run out of time. And so I had set up an appointment for like within a couple of days of that. And again, the lady didn't come to clean it. And finally, I called the management office, and the lady had the audacity to say to me, well, why can't you clean it?
Oh, wow.
I am like, what? And I told her, I was livid. I said, listen, this house is supposed to be move-in ready. It is not safe and sanitary for me to even have my daughter sit on the toilet. I said, it needs to be cleaned, and I am not going to clean up somebody's congealed pee that's all around the toilet and on the floor. But however, if you think that it's okay for me to clean it, why don't you come and clean it? You know, since you're okay with that. And she said, okay, no, I'll give the lady your phone number and have her reach out to you so that she can set up a time to call you so that, you know, she can come and clean when it's convenient.
Next week.
Yeah, well, lo and behold, I'm like, okay, so that day I drive back home. That day before I drove back home, I decided, I'm like, you know what? I can at least hang up clothes in the closets. I know the carpets have been cleaned and they're dry. So at least I can start putting hangable clothes away, you know, and since I can't put my dishes or anything else away, I can at least do that. So as I'm putting away my clothes, I see in the doorway out of my peripheral vision this beautiful little girl. She had on this cream-colored dress with a little cream-colored pinafore over the top, kind of like an apron kind of thing, like the 1980s style, with the little boots with the buttons on the sides. And she had brown hair. It was pulled back with a big bow, and she had a big bow behind her too, because you can kind of see it sticking out, because she was slender. She looked to be like maybe 7 years old. She wasn't that old. And she's standing in the doorway, and I realized that she's a ghost. And I said to her, I said, hi. And I said, you have pretty shoes. And she looks down at her shoes and all of a sudden looks over her shoulder. And this look that comes over her face is terrified. And she bolts off towards my daughter's new bedroom. And I'm like, oh, okay. You know, that was a little weird, but I must have frightened her. She must have been afraid that I could see her, and I'll get her crossed over. I knew that wasn't going to be an issue. So I went ahead and I left. I went home. I loaded up more boxes. And as I'm on my way back with the second load of boxes, I get a call from the cleaning lady. Very interesting call.
Oh,
Yes, very interesting call. I literally had to pull over because she said to me, she said, I don't know what you believe. She said, but please do not move in to that apartment. And I'm like, well, why? And she says, because it's haunted. I'm like, what? So I pulled over. I mean, I felt sick to my stomach because here I am. Now I'm down to like 5 or 6 days, like 6 days. My furniture's coming in 3 days. And so I pulled over and I said to her, I said, is it the little girl? And she says, there is a little girl. She said, but it's not, the little girl is not the problem. She said, it's the tall, slender man with the black eyes that mumbles.
oh,
And I'm like, I remember being in the kitchen, putting the boxes in there, and I could hear mumbling. But because the way that the front kitchen window was, there was a small area of like maybe 3 feet out from the window of planted area, and then a sidewalk, and then the parking lot where you park your cars in front. So I assumed that it was somebody on their phone, talking low outside or whatever it was. But then at one point I could have sworn that I heard it say my daughter's name. But I ignored it. I thought it was something from outside, but I kept hearing the mumbling, and then it would stop, and then I would hear the mumbling. So when she mentioned the mumbling man, I'm like, oh, damn, that must have been what I was hearing. And she said, and I said to her, I said, well, do you think if I were to have them move me to another apartment or townhouse, that it would be okay? And she said, no, the entire building is haunted, but the townhouse that you're moving into and the one next door to yours are the worst. She says there's something about the corner of your living room near the French doors that is like a portal that they come in and out of. And I'm just sitting there ready to throw up. I'm like, I've gotten 2 loads of boxes moved in there. I have nowhere else to go, that I can, because she even asked me, she said, is there, because I told her, I said, listen, I've already signed the lease. And even if I were to back out of the lease, it's going to take them 30 days to give me back my money. And that's all the money that I have to go and get another place. I said, so I wouldn't, I don't have another $5,000 to pull out of my rear end and, and pay somebody else to get settled into a new place. And she said, well, do you have any friends or anybody that you can move with? And I told her, I said, well, I do have, people that I could go to, but I'm not allowed to take my daughter out of the county legally because of my divorce. I have to keep her in the county that we're in, and those people live outside of the county. So I can't do that. I have to, move forward and move in. And so she even asked me, she said to me, she said, please, I do not want to go back in that house. She said, the cleaning company, after I went there, she said, I told them what happened. They think that I'm the crazy lady, but when I have feelings about things, I tell them about it. She said, and they were supposed to send somebody, but after everybody heard about what happened to me, nobody wanted to go back to your house and finish cleaning. And I'm sorry. And she said to me, she said, look, if you can get another service, I don't want to return there. I will pay for it. So I told her, I said, well, it just so happens that I have another service that's coming. And she did. She met me at the townhouse and gave me the money for it. And at that point, my son and I told him about it. We went through and we had cleared the house. And this is when I was still a little inexperienced. I didn't know that you start at the left of the door. I didn't know that I knew about dragon's blood, but there were a lot of things that I was doing the wrong way. So my son and I had gone through and tried to, to clear the house the best that we could. And so when she came to give me the money, I said to her, I said, will you come in and see if it feels different? We did a clearing of the house, and just come in and see what you think. And she came in and she said, mm-mm. She says, it's still active in that corner over there. So I had a statue of Mother Mary and Jesus. Not that I'm Catholic, but it was a beautiful statue of them. And I went and I tucked it right in that corner, to try to put some positive energy in there.
Right.
And so it started like that. My bill was supposed to come and help do a walkthrough with the fire component that I learned how to use, with him to clear it out. But he kept getting sick. So he was supposed to come one weekend and then he got sick. And then he was supposed to come another weekend and then he got sick. And things were happening in the house. My son had his plans fell through and he said, I'm going to have to sleep on your couch for a little while. And I was actually thankful to have another grown person there besides me, because my daughter was just like 7 years old at the time. And so, I heard him one night laying on the couch and he said to it, stop now, get away from me, don't touch me. And then a little while later, he's like, I told you to stop. And it turns out that it was fluffing his hair. He literally came upstairs to me and he said, Mom, he said, I know this sounds weird, but can I sleep on the floor in your room? Because that thing keeps bothering me downstairs. It kept messing with his covers and fluffing his hair and stuff like that. I don't know why my battery's getting drained all of a sudden, but I'll keep an eye on it and I might have to take these off and plug in my battery.
Okay.
So he ended up sleeping, upstairs on the floor. So finally I said to him, my daughter, when she had her turn also to sleep in her room, she kept coming out of her room. Mommy, can I sleep with you? There's something in my room. There's something in my closet playing with my toys. Literally was setting her toys off. I thought it was her sneaking up, turning the light, the musical toys on and stuff like that, but it wasn't. It was obviously the little girl ghost that was going in there, curious about the toys and things like that. And so it scared her. And then she kept saying that something was touching her head and fluffing her hair. And finally I'm like, look, just come on, come on in here. We'll see if we can help the little girl cross over tomorrow and then you won't be bothered by it anymore. But she ended up staying in my room with me throughout the whole lease. And my son ended up taking her room. And we found, and that's how I learned in the book with the self-help section in the back, how to, when you live in a house that's butt up against another house or one above and one below, how to put a force field of energy to block things once you've gotten them out from coming in and through into your house, which is so important because when you're clearing a house that's connected in that way, they just exit to the other side or go upstairs and wait for you to get done and come back a few days later. Like it's no big deal,
Right.
So you have to learn how to block them out, which I learned was to, after you clear it, and you need to make sure it's clear because you'll block them in with you. If you don't get them all out, you take sea salt or Himalayan salt in a bowl and a stone, and you embed it into the center and you place it in all four corners of the farthest corners of your house. Is how you do that in the farthest corners. And it creates energetic lines that connect one with the other. That's kind of like a force field that keeps them out, and it does work. So we did that. So I wasn't having problems in my house anymore, but lo and behold, I started talking to the next door neighbors and I noticed that they were moving. And I'm like, well, how long have you guys lived here? And they said, 6 months. And I said, well, I didn't know you could get a 6-month lease. They didn't offer, that to me. And she said, no. She said, we're moving. They don't fix anything. The management company keeps changing over. She says, the railing on the stairs, you can wiggle and wobble. It's not safe. And I said, have you had any problems with ghosts in your house? And her eyes got big. And she said, why do you ask? And I said, because there are some issues in my house. And I told her what the maid had told me. And she said, we have had some problems here too. And it just so happened that her father was a deacon and he was holding church in their living room. So I would hear them on Sundays and Tuesdays going at it, and it would literally shake the pictures off of the wall. But I was grateful to have that vibration going through the house at the time, knowing what I knew. But there was one day in particular, and there's a lot of stuff that happened, and I'm leaving a lot of it out, but there was one day in particular that I saw her getting into the car with her children very, very late at night. And the mother was like, well, where are you going? We're packing to move tomorrow. And she says, no, I can't sleep here. She says, I cannot sleep here. And she loaded her kids in the car. And the mom's like, well, where are you going to go? And she walks back to the mom and she says, there's something trying to have sex with me, and it's pulling down my covers and trying to pull down my underpants. And I cannot sleep here anymore. She says, I'm leaving. I'll come back tomorrow and help the family move, but I will never step never ever sleep in this house ever again. She said, and that's it. Yeah. So the next day she comes and she brings a friend. And of course, the family's like in and out hauling stuff over. They had a trailer that they were pulling behind a truck, and the parents had just left with a load. So it was just this lady. Her kids were not with her, but she brought a friend with her. And they went into the house, and I hear this loud thud up against the wall. And she comes, I see her outside, and I'm like, is everything okay? She says, I'm not going back in there. She said, they're going to have to help move. And then she started to tell me, she said, my mom, she said, like a week ago, she said, I overheard my parents arguing in the middle of the night because my mother thought that my father had rolled over and was getting amorous with her. And when she rolled over to acknowledge him, he was laying on his side sleeping, facing the opposite direction. And so she hit him like with her hand, or nudged him really, really hard. And she said, why were you touching me all over like that? And now you're rolled over to go to sleep, and I'm like, all ready to get jiggy. Yeah. And he's like, what are you talking about? He says, I've been sleeping this whole time. Well, it was because Mr. Friendly, and that's the picture that I sent you of the naked ghost with his hands over his Johnson so that it's G-rated. I did take that with my own camera. I outlined it so that people will know where to look in the picture where it's not. It's the first time I've ever seen a naked ghost, because usually loved ones and people like that, they show up in clothes. Nobody wants to see mom naked. If you've got people
Right.
come to collect you when you're passing. But so she was telling me this, and she was telling me about how she was in the room the night before, and she was laying down on her stomach, and she felt something come in and lay on top of her on her back. And she said that she could feel it trying to pull down her underwear. And I'm like, oh my God, that's terrible. And so they went ahead and they moved, and I didn't see them. And Bill and I took a vacation, went to Florida, and came back. When we came back, the townhouse, I was in number 4. That was number 5, was now empty because they had moved out. Number 4 was the one that they were still renovating that I would have gotten, which would have been haunted anyway, according to the housekeeper. They were still They'd just finished renovating it. So when I came home from that week in Florida, I noticed that there was furniture being moved into the house, and my heart just sunk. And I'm like, God, I wish I could have warned them. They're walking into more than what they realize. And I was out in the backyard, and the lady was kind of nasty, and she walks up to me and she says, make sure that your dogs don't come over on my patio, because for every 2 townhouses, they had a shared paved area, not paved, but concrete area that was divided, that you'd share one side and they have their side.
Right.
And because she said that she found a dog turd, and I'm like, well, first of all, my dogs go in the grass and I'm outside with them when they go. I said, and we've been gone for a week. My dogs haven't even been here. So you might want to talk to some of the other neighbors, because there are a lot of other dogs that do run here, and they will crap on your patio. But you should, and I remember thinking to myself, gosh, what a bitch, I mean, talk about a first impression. You just walk right up to me, don't introduce yourself, and say, you just better make sure your dog doesn't come and poop on my patio. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, oh, wow, this is going to be interesting. So then I met her roommate, which was a man that was very, very pleasant. Both of them would sit. There was not smoking allowed in the building, so they would sit in the front of the building on the doorstep, and they would smoke. So every once in a while, I would go outside and I would visit with him. And I made mention to him about the ghosts. I said, listen, I wish that I could have warned you before you moved in here about the ghosts. And he said, he just looked at me and he said, the ghosts? He said, that makes a lot of sense. He says, we have a bathroom door downstairs that keeps slamming itself shut. And we thought that it was a breeze or whatever. He says, until the cabinet doors started, one of them kept opening itself and shutting itself. And they'd get up in the morning and the drawers would be pulled out in the kitchen type thing. And he said, and he said, so we're having, issues with that as well. And I'm like, well, let me give you some dragon's blood. He's like, what do we do about it? So I gave him some dragon's blood and, told him to go in and at least, burn some of that they didn't like it. But again, I was a novice at the time. So what I gave him to do would help, but I didn't know the steps to use completely to do, to make it work right. Cause this was like 6 years ago. So anyway, while he and I are outside, this young woman from apartment 1 comes up to us and she says, have you seen, this cat? My cat that's normally an indoor cat got out and it hasn't been home for a couple of days. We can't find it. Will you keep an eye out for it? And so we agreed to do that. And the next morning I see 2 people walking past the French doors in the backyard, and I open it and it was her and her roommate again looking for the cat. And she asked me, she said, we're leaving out some cat food and some water. So if you see the cat, will you please, take it in and, we'll come and get it from you when you come back. So that evening when she came back, she came by and she said, did you see the cat? And I said, no. And she said, my friend opened up the doors to go underneath this building. She said, and you wouldn't believe all of the dead cat carcasses underneath the building. And I remember thinking to myself, at one point I was in the house. It was the first day that I had gone in there with my daughter, Ashley. And there was this stench of like one time I passed as a little girl, a bird that was dead, that was decaying. And there was that sweet, stinky decay smell that when something that's been living starts to rot, it's a distinct odor. All of us have smelled it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It was that kind of a smell. And I just chalked it up and I thought, well, maybe it's some of the adhesive that they used to put down the flooring or the dye in the new carpet or something that's making that horrid smell. Because sometimes the adhesives smell bad. So when she said that, I said, you're kidding me. I said, well, that's a health violation, right there. I said, we should call the health department on them and have them come out, to do that. Unfortunately, her cat wasn't one of the carcasses that was under there, but apparently cats were going underneath the building and they were like closing them in under there. So anyway, apparently her cat showed up a couple of days later and she made mention of it. But when she came to tell us, she had her roommate with her. And I said, how long have you guys lived here? They said, oh, we've been here just almost a year. Our lease is finishing up and we can't wait to leave. She said, it's gotten to the point here where the management company changes over so much that we don't even know where to send our rent. She said, we've sent our rent to the place that we thought we were supposed to. And it turned out that it wasn't the right place. And then we couldn't get our rent back for 30 days. And she says, it was just a big mess. It's just a lot of problems here. And I said, have you had any ghost activity in your house? And one girl looks at the other and she says, see, I told you. See, I told you. I wasn't making it up. See, I told you. So, and the other girl's like, well, no. And she says, yes, I have. I told you about it. And again, it was their cabinets, the drawers, their chairs moving, and the covers being pulled down on some of the girls. So, and I just want to back up a little bit. Before I had the house where I had the energetic force field, so to speak, in the house with the stones, with the salt, I was laying in my bed the first night and I could hear tap, 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 tap right next to my head on my nightstand. And I remember thinking, well, maybe it's dew dripping off of the eaves where the gutters were. You know what I'm saying? Something like that. And then I sat up and I heard it again, tap, tap, tap. And then I felt my covers being slowly pulled down. And I grabbed them and I pulled them back up real quick. And I laid there and pretended that I was asleep. And all of a sudden I feel it again, slowly taking my covers down. I sat up and I said, you better get the fuck out of my room. I did. I'm like, you are not allowed to touch me. You need to get away from me. You need to go somewhere else and play with somebody else that's going to be more scared than me. I was upset. And of course it was it was icky that happened. But it just so happened that out of all of the townhouses, of the 10 of them, there were 7 houses that were just women now living in there that were like single moms with kids and stuff like that. And there was one in particular that was a lady that was sitting out in the parking lot. She was talking on her phone, and I was outside, and her little boy runs up to me, cute little boy, and I was talking to him, and she then gets out of the car and comes over, and I introduced myself, and she says, "Oh, we're moving in, to number 7." And I said, "Wow." And she says, "And I was just talking to this psychic on the phone." And I said, "You were?" I said, "Have you?" I said, "I want to tell you this place is haunted. You may want to reconsider it." She said, "The psychic told me that," she said, "because we've already slept 2 nights here." She says that there's a spirit in this building that's having sex with me during the nighttime while I've been sleeping. And she says, "And I have woken up with my underpants down around my ankles twice." She said, "In evidence that I had been aroused during the night sleeping." And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, but then she also told me that she was an escort and she did phone sex as a profession. And I'm like, man, they're feeding at your house, honey. That's why you got them in your house. And it just so happened that they ended up not even staying 2 weeks and ended up moving back to the place that they had moved out of, actually. She also had DSS show up and take her kids. But anyway, because I guess some of the activities that she was doing and not providing them those rooms. And anyway, it was a mess. But I'm like, man, I hope she takes her creepers with her when she goes and maybe collects a few of the other ones to take them too. But
now, how often is there one that's like sexual as far as ghost or paranormal?
They talk about the incubus, is it succubus and
incubus,
yeah, type thing. But this wasn't that. This was just a pervert that was a ghost that chose not to cross over, which is why I have that picture of him that was angry and chose to stay earthbound. And he was doing this just because he was a pervert. So it wasn't like, because the incubus and the succubus, when they come in, they'll perch on your bed. Usually they'll perch on your headboard or your footboard, and they'll watch over you while you're sleeping. And that's why sometimes when you wake up, you can only move your eyeballs and you have that sleep paralysis that they tell you is something else. But usually you're being visited by something that way. And it doesn't mean that they're always having relations with you, but something's going on with that, where you wake up and, you can't move your head or anything. You could just move your eyeballs. But usually when those are in the room, they sometimes can appear as something attractive when they're not. You know what I'm saying? And this guy didn't give a flip. The thing that was funny to me is that here he had been showing it off to, crawling in bed with people, pulling down women's underwear during the night, crawling in bed with them, having sex with some of them. But when I saw the waffling to the air and I took my picture in that direction of him, he had his chance for his centerfold moment, and he decided to cover his Johnson. All of a sudden now he's bashful. He wants everybody to see it. And now all of a sudden he's got that, and he's like, nope. He covers it up in the picture. I don't know if you were able to load that on in the picture that I had sent you, but
no, I did not.
That's okay. It's in the book. They have, Gerald and Jane have seen it. They can verify that it's real. You can see him in the picture, can't you?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the outline, and it was during the daytime when I took that picture. It was like 11 o'clock in the morning when I saw that waffling, and I was in one of the other people's houses. There was one lady that was a med student, and she was living there with her boyfriend, who was also a med student. And I was out, I was out at 1 o'clock in the morning. I stayed up late. I was letting my dog out in the grass. And I noticed her like, 3 doors down out on her patio, and she's talking on her phone, and seems to be very, very upset. And all of a sudden I hear her say, well, my neighbor's outside. So she's, she wanted to hang up. And I said to her, I said, is everything okay? And she said, well, not really. And she seemed upset. And so I walked over. And of course, I talk about ghosts to everybody. So I don't care. To me, I don't care if they think I'm crazy. Most of them deep down know that they exist. They just have been taught to be afraid of it. So I said to her, I said, are you okay? And she said, would you mind standing here while I go inside and get my purse really quick? I need to leave and go to my parents' house. And I said, is something wrong? I said, are you having any issues with ghosts in your house? And she's like, how did you know? And so I told her, about number 1 and number 3 and number 4 and number 5, just briefly, and number 7, and she was in number 8. And then there was another lady in number 10. And I started to tell her just a little bit. And she said, oh my God, she said, my fiance is he was either out of town or doing his internship or something like that, the night shift, and that she was there alone. And she said that something was, when she was taking her shower, she could get out and she could hear this mumbling man's voice, that when she was laying in bed, it started to pull down her covers and she felt something crawl in bed with her. And it freaked her out so bad that she was willing to drive 2 hours away to her parents' house to go to sleep at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And she said that she would come back when her boyfriend came back. So a couple of days later, he was not doing his shift work and he was home with her during the nighttime. And lo and behold, I get a knock on my door. It is like 9 o'clock in the morning and it's him knocking on my door. And there she is standing right behind him with her head full of shampoo and she's wrapped in a towel. And she says, you've got to come. You've got to come. The ghost is back. You've got to come. So I went over there and that's where I got that picture of that male ghost. Sure enough, he was in her house. And she didn't even, obviously she was in the shower. She got out with shampoo in her head and her boyfriend's kind of skeptical. He's like, well, my girlfriend said that she talked to you and something about some ghosts and she's all upset and she wants you to come. And then she's like right behind him. Oh, come, you got to come now. So, and sure enough, there was something in there. I ushered it out, made it leave. But those people didn't stay long either. The turnover in this apartment building was, I don't think anybody other than those one people that I knew of that stayed the whole year that had the cat issue. And I also told everybody about the dead cats underneath the building too, which was disgusting. But
was the ghost always naked? Do you think he was always naked?
That one, well, I don't know, but I know that I saw the little girl, which also the maid saw. My son also saw her and my daughter saw her. I saw the skinny man with the black eyes. He wore a pair of jeans and he had like a red flannel plaid shirt on. And he would hide up in the ceiling between the first and the second floor. Because when we finally went through with the fire component, we could see him skimming across the ceiling, kind of going in and out of the ceiling until we finally caught him caught him or caught something in the pan, or he left and went somewhere else. I don't know for sure because they can exit. And
so
then,
it wasn't a slender man or nothing as far as, like that type.
I don't think that it was the man with the flannel shirt on. That was the one that mumbled. This one was, that guy was really, really skinny. Like bony skinny. And this other fellow that was, he was like a slight medium build, more on the slender side.
Okay.
But not the skinny side. And you saw his picture.
Yes.
His thighs are filled out and things, but they're not big. He's slender. He's not skinny. He's not medium build. He's slender. And let me see here. I'm going to have to plug this in because it's getting ready to go dead on me. Bear with me just 1 second.
Okay.
Hold on. I'll be right back.
All right.
Just got to plug it in.
So I think the question in chat is, did the ghost kill the cats? I think Lynn said that the cats were going in there and the doors were being closed. So I think the management or people were trapping the cats by accident, I guess, if I understand right.
Or on purpose.
Or on purpose. Because they were wanting to know if the ghosts were killing the cats.
And that is true. Cats can see ghosts.
Yes.
Dogs can see ghosts too. So I don't know that answer. I just know that there were quite a few of them under there. I know that they did have a feral cat issue at that house, and I would feed them. I'm not going to let some mother kitty out there, starve with her little babies. And it was just one cat, more so a little black and white tuxedo cat that would come, and she had a couple batches of kittens, and and I'd find homes for them and stuff like that, just like I still do now. I can't just see something, going hungry. But yeah, I have no idea. I have no idea how they got through there through the vents or something like that. But when the lady said that, she said, you wouldn't believe how many dead carcasses are under there of cat skeletons under there. I mean, there were things, the building was an old building. I mean, it was built like in the 1950s. But they had renovated it, and a couple from California had purchased it, and they renovated it and made it look really, really nice inside. But it was still an old building.
Is that the time period the little girl was from, the 50s, or was she from the 30s, 40s, the way she was dressed? Or
what? I think more like 1800s.
1800s, okay.
Yeah, like the latter part of the 1800s, because of like I said, she had the little boots on with the buttons down the side.
Yeah.
But were like the top colors a different color than the bottom color. They were like dress shoes, and her dress appeared that way. Like some of the pictures that you see of, like the 1800s, I would say, like late of 1800s. But so there were a couple of things in there, and I know, even. I remember one night distinctly, I was coming down the stairs to go into my kitchen, and I see this thing in a cloak, literally kind of veering into my front door and then veering back out, because I have those salt things to block it. And it was wanting to come in, but it then evaded, then it went right back, out. It was skimming along the line and just kind of coming in my door just a little bit. But, I wrote the book with the help in the back, because so many times I've been called to clear somebody's apartment or their townhouse. And again, like I said, the ghost, it's like, oh, okay, we'll just go next door and wait for him to finish, and then we'll come right back. And I don't care how thorough you are in cleaning that. And also, you don't know what your neighbors are doing, so even if you do clear something, you don't know what they're doing that could bring spirits back into your place either.
Right.
So you have to safeguard yourself with, some kind of a spiritual force field to keep them out the best that you can. I will say this: when I went into that lady's house, the woman with the shampoo, I actually got an attachment on me in her apartment. So when I went back into my house, I then started to have problems again in the townhouse that I was living in, even though I had all that force field and the salt and everything, all the barriers in place. And I'm like, that's it. I had to clear the whole thing out again. When you clear it out again, you got to take the salt in, because then they won't go out of the building. They'll just kind of stay in there. So in that moment, I'm like, screw that. I'm not going in anybody's houses anymore, because even though you've put that force field and you've cleared, if you get an attachment on you, you will walk it into your house while it's piggybacking. So, and that's what happened. And it was a nasty one too. And that's when I saw that dark thing shimmying by my front door, and I'm like, what? And then activity started to pick up in the house again, and we had to clear it all out again and put in the force field, so to speak, into the places. I did call the management company at one point, and I informed them that the house was haunted. And the lady's like, haunted? She's like, well, and I told her that I wanted to break my lease, and they're like, well, that's not one of the reasons for which you can break the lease. And I explained to her what I had said to the original agent that I had met with, and that she said that she would work with me. And she says, well, she doesn't work here anymore. And then, of course, it changed over literally multiple times. I don't remember, like 3 or 4 times, management companies. So you couldn't keep up, as I had made mention. But the management company, the last, I actually sent them the picture. I said, she says, you're joking. And I said, no. I said, I have a picture of the ghost. I will send it to you. And lo and behold, she could see the ghost. And I said, can you see the ghost? And she said, yes. She says, I'll have a manager call you. And a manager that was over mine she was nasty with me on the phone, about, well, we'll have to pursue you for the rest of your rent, because I still had like 5 months left or something like that. And they didn't care. They didn't care. They just wanted the money. And the thing about these management companies now that manage these apartment buildings is it's not like there's an office that you can go to. They do just like all the attorneys and everybody are doing now, where they have these buildings with a rent an office in it, where you rent a room with a giant table to have your meeting, and then everybody gets up and leaves. You don't need the secretary. You don't have to have the electric bill. You don't have to have the water machine, or even employees for that matter. And so you don't have where to go, to show up with most of them. And this last one was that way. It was a big building that you would go in that was nothing but spaces that would be rented out by the hour, for them. And then they had a box that you could leave the key in, like a mailbox kind of thing with, where you'd slip it in.
Yep.
So you wouldn't have any recourse, to even walk in and say, listen, you need to do something about this. And they stopped answering my calls. They stopped responding, and I would call and nothing.
Wow.
So, yeah. But anyway, this is a real problem. Things do happen like this, and people need to know how to clear things. A lot of times people don't realize that when you are clearing a house, and I use a fire component now, which I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I would tell you guys how to do it off the podcast, because I don't want anybody to do it and not do it correctly and burn their house down. And people don't realize that you have to sage and salt bath correctly and completely, because even one thing that gets left out can throw the whole thing off. So, and people don't realize that when, it's like, oh, well, I smudged. Well, what did you smudge with? Sage? Okay, well, what did you do? Well, I just kind of, fanned it around a little bit. No. First of all, when you're dealing with darker entities like demons or incubus and succubus, you want to use something stronger like dragon's blood, which you can get on Temu. You don't want to get it in Walmart, because that's that Better Homes and Gardens stuff, and it's just scented crap. It's not real dragon's blood. You can get it on Temu for $2 or $3, or you can go into a religious store and find it, or something like that.
Right.
And it can be the resin or it can be the sticks. It doesn't matter. But people don't realize that when you do go to smudge, you go to your front door and you start to the left. And go to the left and you follow all of the walls. But before you do that, you open all your cabinets, your dishwasher, your washing machine. Everything gets opened. You put a little bit of ammonia, just a splash, in all of your drains. That includes the drain in your dishwasher. All of them. You do not rinse them down or flush them during your clearing, because they like to hide in spaces, and they will hide in your drain. And the ammonia gives off such fumes, and they're energetic, that the fumes, it repels them away, so they can't go and hide in there. So you've got all your drawers open, all your closets open, your oven, your microwave, everything's open, so that the smoke can get in there as you're going through, that things cannot hide. And you start at the left of your front door, and you follow that wall. Just follow in and out of rooms and closets and hallways, and you just keep following. And if you get to a stairwell, then you go ahead and you go up the stairwell, continue to the left, following in and out until you come back down, and then you do the right side, the stairwell, and then you go until you come back around to the right side of the front door.
Have you ever heard of, you said they hide in drains and places that, they can get away from the smoke or the incense.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way for them to get into in your copper wires for electrical systems to hide?
Oh, they can. They love they can turn on and off lights.
Right. But I was just curious if they'd go in through your outlets or whatever to try to get away and still be able to come back in through the electrical system.
Yeah, I don't know. That I don't know. I know that they can manipulate it. They can manipulate electronics, mechanical things, televisions, lights, that sort of thing. I have no idea about the electrical things, but I know that they like to hang out around like fuse boxes and natural stone fireplaces and that sort of thing because they do get an energetic vibe off of it. So you will find where there are orbs all around, that area, and that they do linger there. They also love hallways and stairwells because there's not a lot of, things that are going to move them around where they can solidify, more and run around. But people don't realize that. They also don't realize, and this is something that I tell over and over, with your salt bath, people, you got to use pink Himalayan salt or white sea salt or white Himalayan salt, not Epsom salt, not table
Celtic salt.
Huh? What?
Celtic salt.
Celtic salt can be good too, but it's got to be something natural that comes from like the ocean or mountains or something where it's chiseled off, where it's accumulated by nature, maybe snow runoff or something like that. And you take one tablespoon to a full bath, and more is not better. So you don't add a whole cup in there. More is not better. 1 heaping tablespoon is enough. And you light a candle because you want all 4 of the elements. So you want your earth, you've got your earth, you're standing on it. You got your water, that's in the tub. You got your air, but you need your fire. So before you light your candle, with everything with candle burning, you have to speak into the candle before you light it, to channel it, to direct it as to what its purpose is when you light it. And the people a lot of times don't do that either. Or even write a little paper underneath and put it underneath of what you want it to do. If you're home and you don't want your husband to overhear you, talking to yourself in the bathroom, you can write it out type thing and kind of put it underneath. And the thing is when you light that candle, then I use Psalms. I love Psalms. There's 91s. There's a lot of protection things that you can read out of Psalms. You can do whatever kind of protection thing that you want. It doesn't have to be religious if that's not your thing. If you're Jewish or Catholic or something, use whatever you use for protection, and you kind of speak into the candle that way and you light it. You get into the bathtub and you soak for 20 minutes, no less than 20 minutes. And people will get in there for 10. You can roll from side to side. And ladies, you got to get your head wet unless you've got like artificial hair attached in there. Then you can kind of sprinkle it over the top, but it's really more effective if you get your head wet. And you'd be shocked at how soft that salt makes your hair. Not something that you'd want to do every day. You do not bathe in it. You do not rinse it off. You get out of the tub and you pat yourself dry, and you try to leave that on your skin as long as you can. So like if you take your shower, if you're a night shower person, then you take your salt bath in the morning. If you're a morning shower person, you take your salt bath at night. And you try to leave that on there because the energetic, the molecular components of the energy and the salt, they mix with your auric field because we are electric and water, and it will broaden your auric field. You want it huge. When it's huge, it creates a force field around you to keep you from walking through the grocery store and having somebody else's attachment jump off of them onto you, which happens. It also, and it protects you in when you're sleeping at night to kind of keep that sort of, thing at bay so that things can't crawl in bed with you or crawl on you, sort of thing. That doesn't mean that they're not going to shake your door, but at least they're not going to be crawling on you. And because we're all light workers and light bearers, and people that are watching this, they are light workers and light bearers because they wouldn't be here if they weren't to watch this podcast. You're under constant attack from negative things, especially right now because the frequency is elevating. It is elevating and it's sloughing off a lot of the old, and we're going to be stepping into the new, more beautiful time frame, which is a whole nother show, about some of the beautiful things with that. But you have to protect yourself. There are too many things that want to bait people to anchor them here in the third dimension so that they have, entertainment, so to speak. But your salt baths have to be taken correctly. And when you get out of the tub, you dub your candle out. You do not blow it out. The blowing out negates it. You need to dub it out. There's different. Get one of those little bell things from the dollar store or a cup or something to dub it out. Never, ever, ever, ever blow out your candles if you are using them as prayer candles. If they're table candles, then go ahead and blow them out. But if you have channeled them or said a prayer over them and they're emitting that light into the universe and putting your prayers into the universe, dub it. If you dub it, then you can come back and relight it. So like if you've done a candle and you need to leave to go to work and you're not comfortable leaving it burning while you're gone to work, you can dub it out and then continue it when you come back, when you're home to observe it. So, and people don't realize that either. These little mistakes that are made, going around and smudging your house, but leaving everything closed up and not putting anything in the drain. People don't realize that these things are important to do it effectively. So, and then they wonder, well, I did it, but nothing happened. Well, did you bathe in the water? Yeah, I shampooed my hair in the water afterwards. No, you don't do that. You don't rinse it off. You don't wash in it. You just pat it off. Or did you blow out the candle or dub it out? Well, I blew it out. No, you got to dub it out. All of these different things are so important to do it exactly in a certain way so that you are covering all the bases.
Once you have your candle, you give it its intention, your prayer or whatever, and you light it. When you write out your piece of paper, if it's an entity like, say, Mumble Man, can you put Mumble Man on there and put it into the flame to get rid of it?
You can ask for protection with Mumble Man, but it's a little bit different. What the bathing does is it increases your auric field. The candles are used more for I have never seen burning a candle get a spirit out of a house. So maybe someone has. It has not worked for me. It doesn't mean that it hasn't worked for somebody else. Usually you light candles for protection. If somebody is sending voodoo in your direction, which the black arts are being used excessively right now, even on the election. You know what I'm saying? There are forces that are using that a lot. So it helps to put a force field around you so those things rebound off of you. So if someone's sending you negative thoughts or someone's, talking, badly about you behind your back, those energetic things go into the universe and they do affect you and you'll feel them, but they will rebound off of you and not stick to you or create a problem for you. You know what I'm saying? Like
I was just curious because you'll hear people talk about, write the bad things on a piece of paper and you throw it in the fireplace to burn it or whatever. So I thought maybe if you had the intentions in the candle and you did the same thing. I'm not saying practice witchcraft or hoodoo or any of that. I was just curious.
No, and I'm not recommending that either. You know what I'm saying? There are people that do practice it that are, and if that's their thing, I'm okay with that. I personally don't do it. The prayer candles are done with Psalms. So you're not casting somebody on something.
Right. Okay.
But candle burning sometimes has to be used to undo something that's been done to you that way. You know what I'm saying? And there are a lot of people that do that. Oh my God. I could write a whole, I had actually put the psycho lady in the book too, but I'm taking her out because a couple of people that have read the book say that it takes away from the story talking about the psycho lady that was putting urine in my parking lot and feces underneath my door handle.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was a psycho lady, but and she put liquid glass in my radiator. So
Oh my.
yeah, nice. Anyway, that's a whole nother show and story too. But I ended up taking that out because that energy from that whole complex of where I was living just kind of drew, all of that kind of stuff in. And yeah, it's very real, people. So sometimes you do have to step out of your comfort zone to do things to protect yourself, but still with those candles for protection, you're anointing them with special prayer oils, you're praying over them, you're writing a prayer to go underneath them. You might be adding different things, you add a little bit of dirt to make it invisible to people. So, if you're taking it off, taking something off that somebody's put on you or whatever like that. But I know that people have done stuff against me where I know it. But if you take your salt baths and you protect yourself, you're going to be okay.
No, I think probably 2 shows ago that we did with you, we talked about Himalayan salt in your shirt pocket or in the soles of your shoes. There's a couple grains.
Yep.
Or in your pockets, if anywhere, if you have space.
Yep. And that's for people that they say, well, what if I don't have a bathtub? Some people only have showers, especially if they're renting, an apartment or something. They're all the walk-in showers. And, that's fine too. You can do like a salt wash on your skin, but you can go ahead and put just 3 grains in your shoe or in your pocket, like you said, put it on a little round Band-Aid and put it up against your skin. If you're wearing a bathing suit, you could put it right here where your bathing suit would cover it, or on your hip or something like that, just to keep that additional protection with you. And thank you for bringing that up. That's an important thing too, that people can do for protection, because you need it. I can tell you that people are crazy right now with this time speed up. Some of the things I see hopping off on people in the grocery store, I'm like, woo, I'm glad I dodged that one.
Right.
And it's real. And all of a sudden you start getting pain in your neck, or your shoulder starts bothering you, or maybe some issue that you've had that has been dormant for a while, all of a sudden reactivates or exacerbates and gets worse all of a sudden. That's all those attachment things. They can do that, yeah, they can definitely do that. Ear ringing and stuff like that. Like if you have not ear ringing, like spiritual ear ringing, but like that, what is it, Meniere's disease type thing, where they have the constant ringing in their ears.
Yes.
Yeah. Or tinnitus or
tinnitus. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if you have your favorite hat, you can put a little salt inside the brim of your hat that you wear all the time when you go outside or leave your house.
Yeah, anywhere that you want to put it, just make sure your skin on your face is a little bit thinner and would be more apt to be irritated because it's thinner. It's also very vascular, whereas on your arm you got a little bit of a fat layer there, or your tongue, there's that separation that way. So yeah, but it's a good idea just to carry it. You can drop a crystal in your pocket too, like a quartz, and kind of amplify it. All of these things are spiritual ways to protect yourself from taking home somebody else's junk, So
a lot of hitchhikers out there.
No joke. Let me tell you, no joke. Yeah. I sometimes, like, Bill, he'll work and he'll come home and I'm like, dude, you've got like 3 things with you here, and they pop into my hand and they feel like cotton balls. And then when I squeeze them, they poof like powder. Sometimes there are ones that feel more like Brillo pads. Those are a little bit harder to get off. And then there are the ones that coil like foam in your hand. So, and that's what it feels like when you kind of pull it away. And anybody that removes things off of people will recognize what I'm talking about, with where it feels like it's just filling up and filling up and filling up and filling up, in your hand. And you're like, ew, you're like,
right.
Fill it up and fill it up, and you're like, ooh, to keep it from going. But yeah, I see them hopping on people in the stores, and they're parasites. So that, anyway.
What do you got, Jane? Anything? You've been awful quiet.
I'm just listening. Yeah.
She's going to be crawling tonight. She's going to be crawling underneath you to sleep tonight.
Yeah, we need a Himalayan blanket.
Yes, that's right. There you go. Himalayan blanket.
Yeah,
that would work.
I do a protective prayer at night.
Oh, I know you do. You guys are protected anyway because you're very spiritual and you're good people, and you've also got the Fae on your team too. And that's a good thing to have as well, is to have other spirit groups. And that's another thing too I wanted to make mention to people. As the vibration increases, we're going to start seeing more of those things. People don't realize that on this earth there are other life forms that are paralleling ours with feet on the ground here on this earth, but because their frequency is higher than ours, we can't see them.
Right.
And things like, for instance, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, skunk ape, whichever one you want to call him, they're all the same thing. He has learned to manipulate. He's an interdimensional being. He's not an alien. He's not like a human throw off, for lack of a better word. He's an interdimensional being. He is galactically on other planets as well, but he has learned to elevate his vibration, and he has to dumb down when you actually see him in physical form walking on the earth for something. And that's why when people are in pursuit of him, dogs and everything chasing after him because they've seen him, that he can disappear like that, because either he elevates his frequency so he cloaks and becomes invisible and he can be standing right next to you, or he steps through portals that are interdimensional. And that's why you might just see 1 foot and then not a second foot, because he has stepped into something that way. So, there's so much. There's just so much a spiritual activity, both good and bad. A lot of it more on the darker side than the light side right now, because they're desperate and trying to get that last gasp, of life, here, or to feed off of people and the loosh that they look for. But it's a good thing to have, Fae around and elementals, and and I say this too. People say, they become afraid of Fae and elementals because Christianity, and I'm not against the Christian religion, people. I do believe in God. I know that Jesus exists, because even the Fae believe in the Creator. Thank you very much. And they've even talked about Jesus and that they were here when he was there as well. But what was I saying? There was a point I was going to make. I forgot.
Oh.
Brain fart. Senior moment. That's my.
You're talking about whoever your creator is.
And fairies.
Yeah. What was it I was going to say about that? I was talking. That Christianity has demonetized the Fae and elementals, and because Lucifer, when he was on the other side, he was the most intelligent angel of music. He was God's favorite until he took it into his own hands and got kicked out. But like the Hatfields and the McCoys and the Democrats and the Republicans, they follow their leader, aimlessly, without question. And that's kind of like what happened to the Fae, and of which they're coming back and away from that, and they are healing from that and coming away, because they realized that it was the choice that was not the appropriate choice to make. But the thing about that is they have joy, and they have the ability to love, and they have the ability to grieve loss. They have the same emotions that we have. And how could they be demons? Demons can't love. They can't experience joy and happiness. As a matter of fact, that's repellent to them. They will dart out of a room. If they hear laughter or joyfulness, or somebody being loving, or even neutral, towards them, and come on in, I want to teach you a class on love. I mean, they'll look at you like you're crazy, and they'll dart out of the room like there's a stench. So with the Fae and elemental realms, some of them are angry tricksters because they've been betrayed so badly by even the Native Americans. I mean, the Native Americans used to feed the puck wedgies to the giants so that the giants wouldn't eat their tribe. The farmers, again and again throughout time, have done have not been fair with them. So finally they're here to be helpers. They enjoy doing that. That is what they want to do. A lot of them are helpers, and farmers would do things like they're supposed to give them a share of the crops that they helped nurture and grow. And the farmers would do stuff like, well, do you want the crop that grows above the ground or below the ground? And so if the Fey Pixie wants the below the ground, then they'll grow green beans that only grow on top. Well, sorry, there was nothing below the ground, or vice versa. Then they'll grow potatoes when they pick above. So they would constantly, they weren't coming from a place in their heart. They were coming from a place of greed, and it turned into, making them pets or workers for them, and having that expectation and demands also being placed on them, which is not coming from a place in your heart. I mean, they have such a beautiful childlike wonder about them. And yes, they can be stinkers, but you know what? Some compassion and kindness turns them around pretty quick. They really don't want to stay mad. You know what I'm saying? They want to connect, and they're fascinated, and they're lovely. I mean, and I know Jane's got them. You guys have got them all around you as well. So they're extra protection too. But sometimes too, they also have to protect themselves from the dark forces, because they see them, and there are issues with them sometimes too that they have to battle. So,
Right. Yeah. So if you have a fairies or fae folk around or anything like that that's friendly, you're seeing, and all of a sudden they're like gone, start looking for something stronger and darker in the area.
That's right. That's right. I mean, there was one point that the fae that was living, I don't know if he's still there right now, on the Louisiana property. I remember my son we were having to go through layers of clearing off some dark stuff. I mean, the last layer had these giant black water bug looking things. And you know how ugly water bugs are, those big water bugs with the big antennas.
Right.
Looked like that. I mean, standing upright, like 4 and 5 feet tall. They were awful. But the thing is there was one point that Bob, our Faye, came in, and he literally had a black eye and looked like he had been in a fight. So he was also battling them, trying to protect the property and trying to protect even us, and that he was having to fight with them as well. So yeah, they go through a lot of things that the humans do go through. They have children, they do have partners. They love pets, and demons, they can't love pets. They can't love anybody. So how can they be demonetized or demons if they have the ability to love?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, if anybody's going to George Norrie this coming weekend, I am going to be there. I'm not a guest, but I am going to be there, so you can come and find me and do some meet and greet. I didn't know with my surgery that I had if I was going to be able to be recuperated from it enough to be a guest, so I'm just going to go as an extra surprise. And so that's this coming Sunday in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm still streaming on Gaia. I just did a segment on Channel 6 News, WJBF, in Augusta, Georgia. It's Good Morning America, Augusta. I'm actually hoping to get in with the real Good Morning America, the big one. So hopefully that will transpire. I've got another showing coming up with a news a news place in Charlotte also. So just waiting to make arrangements to do that. And yeah, I'm hoping. My book is already written. It's supposed to have been out. It's been ready for almost 2.5 years, but life is just kept happening. My sister passed away. Had to be put on the back burner, but it will be coming out. Sorry. Excuse me. And then of course I have Colors of Heaven. I've almost completed the book number 4 in the Omnipresent series, which is No Place Like Home, which talks about Bob. I'll be doing 2 additional books following just that one itself. The one after that will be No, You Don't Know Me. And then I haven't come up with the name of the third one yet or been given that information yet. That'll be talking a little bit more in detail about the Fae and Elementals. And then I've got a 5th book in the Omnipresent series that'll be coming out as well. So I'm just writing away.
Awesome.
There you go.
Yeah,
Awesome.
excuse me, something doesn't want me to talk anymore because I'm doing things. Oh, and I've almost completed my Mace Energy class. I should have that finished by the end of May. So I'll be looking for people to practice on, and I'll do it free. And if you want to have me work with you, trying out some of that, it takes what they call ridges out, which are blockages that create us to have post-traumatic stress and fears about things and things that limit us in lifetime and hold us back from doing things, that are good for us, fears that we have because of things that have happened previously in our lifetime to create that ridge. It clears those out. You clear them, you walk through and you clear them out together. And it's a wonderful thing. I have had it done for me. I didn't know that I needed it, but I did. And it really, really helped me with some things that I had, kind of buried. And you don't have to bring all of it up like you do with a counselor, where you have to dredge up all of the awful things that happen to you, because really that's counterproductive with the way that energy works and the universe works. What you put out verbally or even thoughts are energetic, goes in and rebounds and comes back to you. The last thing that you want to have come back to you is being molested or having somebody cheat on you or something like that.
Right.
So you don't have to go, or being beaten, so you don't have to go in and dredge all of that back up. Instead, you just go straight to the point and you release it. And a lot of people, even with SRA and things like that, they're working with this. Usually one is all that's necessary. In some cases, like those, or post-traumatic stress, a couple extra ones are also necessary. But I'm going to be looking for probably about 30 people to practice on. And then, of course, friends and family get the discount anyway. So, type thing if they need. But I'm going to be doing that as well coming up, and hoping to help people reclaim their joy.
There you go. Sounds wonderful.
Yeah. So that's what I'm busy doing.
That's awesome. Yeah, you've been keeping busy, that's for sure.
Yeah. I'm not as busy as I usually am because I had to take some time off, but my schedule's really filling up fast now. So
we better get you rescheduled fast then.
I would suggest it, because I'm booking in the latter part of May, first part of June.
We're in the June also. I mean, we're booked all the way into June.
Good. Oh, and also I'm supposed to be getting with, I wanted to start my own podcast.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah, because I was supposed to, Ground Zero was looking for a female host, Clyde Lewis's show.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Not on Clyde Lewis's show, but an offshoot.
His radio network.
Blanket, kind of like what Steve Stockton does.
Yeah, I was just going to say what Steve's doing. Yeah.
Exactly. But they wanted a female host, and so they asked me to do it. So I'm going to do that as well. They have been going through some changes, so I'm waiting for those changes to complete, and then they're going to bring me in. So I'm not sure. It should happen some point this month. I'm not sure when. When I do, I'm going to have you on my show.
Oh, nice.
We'd love to be there.
Yeah. So definitely, I'll be reaching out and, grabbing you guys for that too. And so we'll share it out, to friends and family, and have give back where people have given me the opportunity, of which I thank you so very much for having me on your show tonight. I always appreciate it. You guys are like family to me. So thank you. I always appreciate the opportunity. And I look forward to rescheduling again soon.
Yes. Yeah, we'll definitely get you rescheduled.
Yeah, so when you get the radio network thing going, let us know so we can let our audience know on where and when to catch you, and
Yeah, we were on there.
fantastic.
We were on there once before with Steve.
Were
quite a
you?
while
Yeah.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve was starting out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love Steve and Nicole, and that baby is so cute.
Yeah.
Oh, I just hey, those cheeks, you just want to. Oh, they're just so cute. He's such a precious baby. I'm so happy for both of them. So yeah. Anyway, did anybody have any questions, or did you want to?
We were pretty much pulling them up when I was seeing some. Yeah.
Yeah, we were mentioning them as we were going along, and you pretty much covered everything that everybody was saying anyway. So I think this would be a good time to end, and
Okay.
but don't go away because we want to talk to you, obviously.
Okay.
We'll just say goodbye to everybody in chat, and
thank you, mods, and thank you, family, for showing up.
yep. So thank you, everybody. We love you. This has been a wonderful show. So make sure you reach out and check out Lynn's books, and the links have been being shared, and I think I have them in the description also. So and go and check out Gaia, where Lynn was on with George Norrie. And like you said, you're going to be at the conference here coming up real soon. So make sure you go there to say hi to Lynn as well as everybody else that's there. And thank you all for coming, and we will see you guys next time.
Yep. Much love.
Keep looking up.
And be the change that you want to see.
Amen.
That's right.
Keep your vibrations high.
That's right.
All right, everybody. Love and peace. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.